Hello and welcome, members of the Healthy Living Meetup Group hosted by Kamwo. My name is Thomas Leon. I'm the organizer and your host for this afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you are. I want to take a moment to welcome new members to our group. I hope you enjoy what we have for you today, and hopefully we have many more events in the future. The mission of our meetup group is to connect members to respected authorities on subject matters. And events are always free, and our speaker suggestions come from you, the members. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to send them our way. This talk is approximately 2 hours. So it will end up local time about, about 1.5 hours, hour and a half. So it'll end about 8 o'clock local time here. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. It's Marc Gian, hope some of you know, is a distinguished healing arts practitioner for over 20 years with 20 years of experience. The backbone of Marc's practice is incorporating mind-body integration techniques from an ancient Middle Eastern lineage. Accordingly, he has spent years studying with teachers, most notably Dr. Peter Resnick, honing his skills. Marc's passion is teaching classes and patients how to successfully utilize the tools of mental imagery and dream work. Marc is the author of 2 books, Holistic Aromatherapy, Practical Healings with Essential Oils, and The Inner World of Night Dreams. Marc is also the developer of Meridian Biologics Essential Oils. Marc has a private practice in Manhattan and Brooklyn, has worked with people via video sessions. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Marc. There you go.
I am. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And of course, I thank you, Tom, for always having me and starting this Healthy Living meetup group and being very proactive with it. I think it's great to get people involved to learn about other teachers and what they can do to continually live a healthy lifestyle or increase their living habits. Today or this evening, what we're going to be focusing on are 3 modalities that are going to be very beneficial in not only decreasing stress and decreasing anxiety and living a calm life, but we're also going to be using these tools to help us have more energy, increase circulation, increase metabolism, increase sex drive, and even increase in time. And how can I say what we will be learning will help us to feel as if we actually have more time during the day? Well, the first thing that we are going to be focusing on is the importance of breath. And if you're coming to this meetup group and think that, or have the idea that we're going to learn all these fancy breathing techniques, no. We're going to do 1 or 2 simple breathing techniques that you can be doing throughout the day. And you'll be noticing that by using the power of your breath, your mind and your heart, thereby your body, will be moving at a much slower pace, and you'll have much more focus, and you will realize that time has been expanded. And this is very true for those of us that have done any kind of meditation techniques or Qigong techniques or even yoga. And so that's one thing that I really want to instill with you guys today. While we are working with decreasing stress and anxiety, we need to understand all the benefits that are going to be happening. So in addition to going into the breath, we will be learning a little bit about how to use your mind and not have your mind use you. We're going to learn a little bit about how to control the mind. And at the end, we'll be doing at least one mental imagery exercise to help us live a stress-free and anxiety-free life. In other words, we will be living with more clarity and more freedom. And we're going to be learning a little bit about some aromatherapies or some essential oils that really help us to increase our focus and also to help to relax our mind and relax our heart. And we will couple them with maybe 6 or 7 very basic, simple acupuncture points that we can use pretty much at any time during the day. And so let's start with a little bit about breath. One thing that we know about breath is that we need it not only, sorry, we need it not only in order to survive, but again, for those of us that have done yoga, qigong, any kind of inner work, we know how important the breath is in order to change our consciousness. And when we change the consciousness, when we change the sort of frequency, the radio station that our mind is playing at, we will begin to perceive and live life in a different way and move in a different direction. And when we are breathing, what we are doing, according to Chinese medicine, we are taking energy, oxygen, the breath of life from the external world, from our lungs, into our nose, into our lungs, and ideally with a deep breath, this energy is going to be grasped by our kidney qi, our, what we call in Chinese medicine, our yuan source qi, or for lack of better terms, for our Western culture, our soul, the deepest aspect of ourselves, and we want to exhale it back into the external world, our deepest purpose. Of course, we're going to be exhaling carbon dioxide out as well, right? Some toxins. We'll get to that in a later bit. However, most of us, when we are breathing very shallowly. We're breathing in a state of consciousness that is fight or flight, meaning we are breathing maybe up to half of our lung capacity. Sometimes if we're very stressed, we're breathing even less than that. And one thing that is important to note, the depth of our breath is related directly to the speed of our heart. So for many of us, if we are breathing very shallowly and rapidly throughout the day, this is what is going to be happening throughout our body. And even if we are not stressed or rushed, we will be having this experience in our body, right? We know this for people that tend to get anxious very quickly or stressed very quickly. If we take an external look at this or an objective look at this, and it's like, what are you really anxious about? Nothing. It's just what their body is doing because of their breath. And not only is this important, but we need to understand that why do people feel as if they need to be in survival mode, right? We could go into many different areas and concepts, but one major area is many of us are living in fear, and we were breathing like this really as a defense mechanism to protect us. And of course, the opposite of fear would be courage, or for this class, I want to use the word freedom. And we're going to go to that when we speak a little bit about mental imagery and some mind-body therapies to help us with anxiety. But nevertheless, we breathe about 20,000 times per day, or take respiration 20,000 times per day. And we need to ask ourselves, how do we want to live? Do we want to live in our world, in our body, where we are moving very quickly? Or do we want to slow down, enjoy the world, and understand that even if we breathe slower, that we will accomplish our tasks? And not only will we accomplish our tasks that we need, we will be doing it in a relaxed, focused, and energized way with natural energy, because breath is the foundation of all of our organ systems. Without oxygen, our organ systems cannot work optimally. Nevertheless, when we're speaking about survival, we're speaking about just basic life, right? Do we want to be alive, or do we want to be living, right? My goal for all of my patients and my students and people that I come in contact with when I speak about healing, I want them to embrace life fully, choose life. Anyway, for survival, we smell the fire. In the past, the pheromones would smell out what we were sexually attracted to. Survival, we can smell our food. However, for evolution, we need to shift our perception with our breath. And the deeper that we allow ourselves to breathe, the more life we are taking in, and the more alive we will feel. Also, the more grounded we will feel as well. Again, most of us are breathing in survival mode, in an anxious mode, using the muscles of our neck, right? Very often when I'm working with clients for the first time, I'll ask them to take a deep breath. And part of it is seeing how they take a deep breath. So very often when they're on their table, they'll literally go, and like this causes me stress and anxiety just by watching them, right? Because I'm in their energy field, I'm in their consciousness. So it's just like, you know, so I take a step back and say, now, slowly and relax, take a slow inhalation through your nose and allow it to fill your belly and expand your rib cage. And when we do this, this is really how we should be breathing on a regular basis. And we'll practice this in a little bit. When we breathe properly, it allows the air to fill our lungs deeply and allow our diaphragm to move downward. And one thing about breathing deeply is that it connects us to our present moment in the world. And we know this, you know, when we know people are having an experience of being anxious, if we're not familiar with mind-body techniques, what's the first thing that we do? We ask them to breathe, just breathe. Why? Because we innately know that by taking slow, deep breaths, it's naturally going to relax our mind, our heart. Oh, is somebody coughing? Let's see. Let me just see if I can mute somebody. Hi, Matthew. I'm just going to mute you. Okay, thank you. Okay, here we go. And also, every system relies on oxygen for optimal function. So if we are taking all of our clinicians' dietary recommendations, lifestyle recommendations, and we're making all this effort to begin to change our diet, but we're not changing the way that we breathe, all of the work that we're doing is only going to work 50% or maybe less or a little bit more than what it actually can do if we are breathing optimally. Okay. And I do believe that we should begin to think about breathing as, or air as a food. So how do we want to eat? We want to eat healthy food for the most part. I still want to have pizza and hamburgers every so often, but I know I can't do that. It's not a good precedent to set for my patients or my students. But we need to think about air as food. Would we eat junk food throughout the day? No. So why should we breathe shallowly throughout the day? Right? We want to live. We want to be alive. We want to accomplish things. We want to be present in this world. We want to feel inspired, right? That's what the breath is. It's inspiration, right? The deeper we breathe, the more inspired we will be. Okay. 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 So the breath, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but for most of us, we know that it's autonomic. It happens naturally because this is the survival mechanism, right? And what's interesting, if you see kids breathing, they tend to take very deep, natural breaths. But who knows what happens as we get older, right? Maybe we have some stress responses, maybe we have trauma, maybe we have whatever story that we can make up to start us to begin to breathe in survival mode, right? However, breathing, as we will see, it can also be very intentional, right? We can intend to breathe deeper, and by using our will to actually breathe deeper on a regular basis, we will notice that not only does it become natural and autonomic, I could guarantee that we will not only feel better, but we will have much more energy and much more focus throughout the day. Why? Because there's going to be more oxygen and more blood flow to the brain, right? We can use rosemary, we could use herbs, I can speak about essential oils, but first and foremost, we need to start with the breath. We have to start with the foundation of life, and this is the breath. The second is water, which I'm about to drink. And also, one thing that I like the participants here to contemplate is if you do want to live a life of action and energy and focus and feeling good and alive and having endorphins be released and live with decreased pain, then we should focus first and foremost on our breath. Not our breath to change our consciousness and to be in some kind of spiritual awakening. No, it's to be here. And just by being here, breathing properly, we're going to have a spiritual awakening. We will perceive the world differently. So how do you want to live your life? How do you want to take your life in? Okay, so these are some questions, okay? Okay, so alignment, very basically, very basic, is very important for when we breathe, right? Right now, I'm completely relaxed and I'm slouching, right? My belly's out, I'm, very relaxed, but in reality, the way that we should begin to breathe and focus on our breath is to have our spine straight, because when we have our spine straight, it allows all of our organs to go into place, and metaphorically and spiritually, our spine is a ladder, right? It grounds us through our sacrum, and it brings us upwards towards heaven, or in Chinese medicine, towards 220, right? So for those of us that do a lot of work with the chakras, it helps to align our crown chakra through to our sacral chakra, right? And for those of us that are interested in essential oils, this is what frankincense helps to do. So spine straight. This will allow more oxygen to go deeper into the lungs and helps the diaphragm to descend, increasing better circulation, more airflow and blood flow. And one thing that's important is to unround your shoulders, right? They don't have to be back like this, but have them as straight as possible. Okay. And this will allow us to feel not only centered, but we're going to feel grounded. And this position invokes a state of confidence and also invokes a state of being present. Okay, so if somebody is slouched over like this, what is this sharing with us, right? This is sharing that they're collapsing their lung qi, right? The goal of breath is to take in life, okay? So what I'd like to do now, for those of you that would like to join me, we're just gonna do a very simple breathing exercise, nothing fancy. We are going to breathe in through our nose to the count of 4 and exhale to the count of 6. Why do we exhale more? We always exhale more because it's through the exhalation and through the release of toxins that our body naturally will relax, okay? So we will begin now. This will take maybe 30 seconds or so. First, for those of you that are interested, please sit with your spine straight, right? Integrity. Okay. And if you like to shut your eyes, you could shut your eyes. If not, that's fine too. So I'll give everybody about 6 seconds to get into position. Okay. So now, before we begin, or I should say, we'll start. We will start with exhaling a little bit of the air that we have already in our lungs. We will do this through our mouth, okay? So you could just follow me. Good. Now this breath will be through our nose, out our mouth. So inhale. Exhale through your mouth. Two more breaths. Inhale. Fully. Exhale. Count of 6. One more time. Inhale. Exhale. So if you did this on the exhalation, you will notice that your belly sort of goes into your spine when you fully exhale. This is actually going to be very grounding, and it's very tonifying for our spleen and our stomach. We're going to do this once again, but for those of you that are doing it, I want you guys to notice how your belly begins to expand when you take a slow, deep breath. If you want, you can even put your hands on your rib cage, and you notice that your ribs will expand as well. Okay, so here we go. Inhale slowly through the nose. My whole body, my whole ribcage, chest, and abdomen are all expanding. One more time. And there's different variations that you can do. You know, very often I'll go breathe in for 6, exhale all the way to 8. Sometimes I'll hold it, then breathe out. So this is just a very simple exercise that you can do. And you should try this, you know, between, 3 to 5 times a day, between 1 and 3 minutes. And you'll notice your mind and your consciousness will certainly shift. Okay. Let's see what next. Okay. So now we're going to go into a bit of the title of this class, and this is anxiety. And I put A equals because when we say anxiety, what are we naturally going to do? Our body's naturally going to go into, even slightly, an anxious response, right? So what I really could have done was I could have made up a completely different word like blob or shrub, whatever it is. We take the meaning out of the word when we align it with some kind of image. So most of us will feel a little bit of anxiety throughout the day, right? Some of us may experience a lot more anxiety throughout the day. Most often, whatever is the anxious object is something that is happening in the future. And whenever we are anxious about the future, we are creating something that is not real. I'm sorry, we are creating something that is not true. However, it is real to us. Why? Because it's in our reality. So our body and our mind begin to live in this story that is in reality, but it's not living in truth. So what happens is our body will naturally respond by wanting to move faster. Why? Because our body wants to be where our mind is. Okay. But the only place that we really can be is in the present moment. Okay. Of course, we would speak about meditation and trying to create our future by thinking about the future, but this is a different subject. That is done with much more intention and focus. When I'm speaking about anxiety, I'm speaking about, for example, somebody's late for the bus, somebody's late for the meeting, somebody has an important job interview, right? So what we're doing, we begin to create literally an image that we are living in, which is completely untrue, but our body is responding as if it is real. Our body and our mind are making it real. It's taking us away from our present moment. And we can never be in 2 places at once. So we need to ask ourselves, where really do we want to be, right? The only place where we can be, and I mean be as in being, is here. And the breath helps with that. Essential oils help with that. But also mindfulness helps with that. Knowing that whatever we are anxious about most likely is not going to happen the way that we are beginning to create it in our minds. Okay. And another error in anxiety, and I'm saying this, I know I'm saying this very matter of factly, but I assure you, I have lots of compassion and I work with people that have had longstanding anxiety disorders. And I know it takes a long time to unravel and bring these ideas into our world. So, and just sort of to share with you. Another error that we make when we are focusing and being anxious about the future is that we are trying to control the future. We can't control the future. The only thing that we can possibly control are 2 things. 1, our actions, and 2, our perception, and 3, if we accept it or not. Those are things that we can focus on, okay? And by understanding that we can never know what the future holds for us, this allows a very big door to open and I'm speaking for myself, and I'm speaking in terms of spiritual medicine, it allows us to open the door of faith. And I'm using the term faith in this context as being okay with not knowing what is going to happen, being aware that there are many possibilities and being okay with that, but also you don't know. And when we live with this awareness that we don't know and we are okay with this, life not only becomes easier, but it becomes much more enjoyable, right? We never know what the future holds, right? So that's one thing to really take into consideration is like, is life always going to be easy? No. But if you made it up to this point of life, and I think we're all above 30 here. I mean, I'm above 40. So we made it through. And all of our life experiences have led us up to this point, knowing that whatever comes our way, we're going to make it through. But now we need to, because we have maturity and wisdom, how are we going to make it through? Are we going to make it through with faith, knowing that we're going to get through, we'll take the proper actions? Or are we going to be running around anxious and living in fear? If the fear complex and anxiety complex does come up, focus on your breath. Look at something in your room that you enjoy, whatever it is to get you back into the present moment. And we'll give you some techniques later on. So again, most of the time anxiety is associated with the future. Now, many of us have had past memories and past experiences that are not to our liking, right? We may think about them and they may bring up anxiety or anger, something that hasn't been resolved. But one thing that I do really want to share, and those of you that have taken my classes before have heard me share this again and again and again, and that is that the past doesn't exist. Whatever we experienced in the past is not in existence anymore. What is in existence is our memories of these events. And one thing to really consider is that the memories are the stories that we replay in our mind about the event. And they may be very close to what happened during that time. However, they're not exactly what happened. The issue is the emotion is still there. And the mental image of those experiences brings upon us an emotion, right? For many of us, this is anxiety or fear, whatever it is. And one thing that we need to realize is that the more that we circulate these stories in our system, the stronger they become. So a very quick technique that I've done and I've learned through my teacher, Peter Resnick, when a new story or an old story comes up, say to yourself, oops, Mark, my name is Mark. Mark, there I go again. And you can imagine a toilet and flushing it down the toilet. Or you can imagine it in your hand and you could throw it into the universe. Whatever it is, it could come through you. And we could do an exercise later on if we have time, okay? And the reason why we are doing this is because we want to begin to create new memories, new experiences. Going back to what we spoke about with the breath is we want to be living life fully. And when we are anxious about past events, the only things that we can do about them is acknowledge them, that it was an experience. It may have been a horrible experience, but it was an experience that you had and you lived through it. Acknowledge it, accept it as an experience, and know that you never need to have this experience again if you choose not to have it. Okay. And I've done quite a bit of mental imagery over the last 20 years with many of my patients, and I've seen great transformations, shifts, really into who they are with just a few sessions of changing a memory. And the goal in changing anything is to live in freedom. And we'll go into that when we do a little bit of imagery at the end. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the mind, right? Very often we think of the mind as who we are. The mind is not who we are. And I am not one, I cannot explain to you who we really are. But what I do know is that we are beyond our mind. We come from a time beyond time and space, and we come into this world with a mission. And I believe that we come into this world with a soul. For those of us that don't believe in soul, or you can use your subconscious mind, that's fine. But we are beyond the mind, right? The only thing that I can equate who we really are to, or an experience, is if any of us have had this really strong intuitive hit on something, that comes from the depth of who we are. That comes from our truth, right? And our goal in this life is to live within these depths and make actions and decisions based on this truth, okay? So our mind can be our best friend, our worst enemy. Just 3 weeks ago, I saw a new patient. I think I spoke about this last class. She came to the session half an hour early. I said, oh, hi, I'll be with you in half an hour. Our appointment was at 2 o'clock. Thinking like, whatever, no big deal. These things happen. Like, who cares, you know? And so she said to herself, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I messed this up. It's like, this is no big deal. This is no big deal. You're not stupid. You punched it in wrong. You made an error in your mind, right? No big deal. Learn to forgive yourself very quickly. Understand that most of the things that we're anxious about or how we speak to ourselves, it's minutia. It's nothing. It's meaningless. Just like most of our thoughts, right? So learn to control the mind. Our mind can be our best friend, or our worst enemy. We should all choose that when we are having a thought about ourselves that is negative, or a thought about another that is negative, or any thought that we have that is provoking anxiety, understand that you can use your mind to shift it in an instant. How? This is something that I speak about in a lot of my classes. It's choice. It's choice. What we think about on a continual basis, and I know I'm sounding harsh right now, and I'm saying this with love, it's a choice. It may be a subconscious choice. So right now we could plant the seeds for our conscious mind to tell our subconscious mind, moment, when we begin to have thoughts of self-doubt or anxiety, oh, Mark, there I go again, or I tend to be very bilious sometimes. So, you know, I could be very stern. So I'll say to myself, Mark, that's enough. It's enough. And you move on. You move on. And each time the thought comes back, it's enough. You move on. Allow yourself the freedom. Get away from the trap. Also, another thing that helps a lot with the mind is understanding how big and how vast this universe is. We think that the universe or the world revolves around us. It doesn't. We use the universe, and the universe reflects us, or the world reflects us, what we are experiencing, our behaviors, our tendencies, and things like that. That's all. Our universe and our world is a mirror reflection of who we are and our perception, and how we embrace it or how we run away from it. And with anxiety, if we continue to run away from it, it's just going to get worse. So one thing that my teacher taught me, this was many years ago, one of the first things to do when we are feeling anxious, we must admit it to ourselves. Because if we don't admit it to ourselves, what do? We stuff it down. Oh no, I'm not anxious. I'm not anxious. No, BS, you're anxious. I'm anxious. We get anxious. Allow yourself the freedom of living in truth that you're anxious. And just by doing that, you will decrease your anxiety 30%, 40%, because you're bringing it out into the world. Okay. Let's see. I think now would be a good time to do a little bit of quick mental imagery of what everybody here can do if they are feeling anxious. Okay. So when we do imagery exercise, it's very similar to when we are breathing properly. For those of you that have taken my class before, you know this stance. We sit in king or queen's pose with our spine straight, feet on the ground, and hands on our knees. And why do we do this? We do it in a king or queen's pose because we want to be the authority on what is happening in our life right now. Okay. And if we are the authority, we can begin to change and transform it and live in a world where we are the king or queen, right? Not that everybody else is going to be our subjects, but we can be the king of our life, right? Or if you're 20, you're not a king, you'll be a prince. It's okay. So let's begin. Again. So this is just something that we can do. And for those of you that don't want to do this, this will be recorded so you can go back and look at it. It takes 12 seconds, 13 seconds. So sit straight, hands on my knees. And I state in my mind the intention for doing this exercise. And I'll say it out loud, but really we want to do it in our minds. I'm doing this exercise to live freely, calmly, presently, in the moment, being free from anxiety. As a side note, you don't necessarily need to use the word anxiety. You can stick with the word freedom. Anyway, exhale one time through your mouth. Inhale. Exhale through the mouth. And begin to see an image in your mind of a ball, a large ball. And give that ball a number that is associated with how high your energy is. Inhale, see the ball, see the number. Exhale, see the number slowly going down on your exhale. Inhale. Continue to see the numbers going down. One last time. Then I'll tell my clients, open your eyes and smile. This is something very basic that we can all do. And when we do mental imagery, what we are doing is working with what is going on presently. I gave you the image of a ball, but for many people, anxiety can be an image of a blob, or it could be an image of a gremlin. It could be whatever is unique to them, right? That's not necessarily for this class. Now, you could also imagine the ball breaking up into little stardust and going off to the universe. All these things will come through you when you're doing the imagery work. If you have any questions about imagery, always feel free to email me. And this is an exercise that ideally we should do sitting down, but we can do it anytime during our day. Okay, we can do this. I remember the first time that I taught at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. I was 26. It was my first class ever, and I was so anxious. My God, it felt like, so literally this is a side note. So literally what I did, I literally introduced myself to the class, and I was so anxious. I said, okay, here are 3 questions, write your answer to them. And then I left the room for like 20 minutes, you know? So it's like, it's a story, right? It's a story, right? Meanwhile, I ended up teaching at Pacific College for like 14 more years with much less anxiety. But with the tools that I am aware of now, that wouldn't have happened, right? But where did it come from? It came from a belief. It came from my belief that said to myself that I wasn't ready to teach. How did I know that this was a false belief? Because whatever comes our way, whatever opportunities comes our way, our mind may not think that we're ready for it, but on some level, the universe does, right? And I was, okay. The first class was a little rocky, but it's okay. Anyway, so that's just a quick exercise that you can do. So now we'll go into a little bit, perhaps for many of us, a little bit more practical and more fun, because many of us really enjoy aromatherapy. And I do want to share with you, when I teach about essential oils and aromatherapy, I teach a lot about the foundation of aromatherapy before I even get into the aromas. But this class, it's a little different, so I'm sort of giving you quick tips on aromas without all the background. But nevertheless, they're still going to be beneficial for you. So why do I like aromatherapy so much? I like aromatherapy so much, the same reason why I like working with the breath so much, is that it shifts the mind, shifts our breathing patterns very quickly, and it works phenomenally when we're working with our breath. So we can be working with breath work for relaxation, but the effects of that will be enhanced when we are using many essential oils. So we have the intention for relaxing our mind. There's like 20 different oils that can help to relax our mind, right? We really only need to learn like 4 or 5 of them if you're not a teacher, you're not an aromatherapy practitioner. So very simply, you could take a drop of an essential oil that's already in a base oil, like jojoba oil. Take a drop of geranium oil, massage it into your hands, about 6 inches away from your hands. Take a slow inhalation. Inhaling the aroma. You can even hold your breath. Exhale completely through your mouth, moving the hands away. And do this 3 times. I call this the palm inhalation technique, and I use it a lot in my practice, and it's written about quite a bit in my book. And this is how we begin to shift the mind, to shift the body, shift the above, to shift the below. And another beautiful thing about working with aromatherapy is that it opens up the orifices. And what are our orifices? Our orifices are what we take, and or not what, but how we take into the world. What are we listening to? What are we eating? What are we breathing? What are we seeing? Color therapy, right? But of course, with aromas, we're working with how are we smelling the world? How are we taking in the world? How are we taking oxygen? How are we taking life in the world, okay? And when we're using aromas, very much like when we're using breath, let's think of our brain waves, or our thoughts, better yet, as a radio station. If you do not like the thought patterns or the radio station that you are on, using your intention and a little bit of willpower with aromatherapy, it can change rapidly. Here's a quick story. I tell it in all my classes because it's so profound. There was a woman that came to me many years ago. She lost her mother and her husband on the same day. Okay, mother and her husband on the same day, and she was also a breast cancer survivor. Okay, so this is probably within 6 to 10 weeks of treating her. Obviously, she's still going through quite a bit of processing, letting go, we call it. So it was a time for her appointment, and Nancy, the receptionist, and I believe one other person, is literally carrying her into my room, holding her, and she's crying, she's emoting, she's going through a very traumatic event, right? So the first thing that I thought of was, forget acupuncture right now. She needs new life into her system to change her consciousness, just for the time being. Of course, she needs to heal and she needs to mope, but this level of anxiety and pain was too much. in order for her to heal, right? Because in healing, it goes in waves, right? Sometimes we need to be strong, sometimes we need to be vulnerable. But for her, knowing that she was dealing with grief, we need to strengthen her lungs in the present moment, right? So all I did was use cypress and I believe frankincense on a point lung 7 over here. After 10 seconds, she says, Mark, I don't know what you did, but I feel completely different. It was the aromas, because the aromas are consciousness. The aromas are consciousness. So when we are working with aromas, we're working with not only our breath, but bringing in new consciousness, new state of being. So this is very important when we're working with aromas, okay? And I believe in this class, we're going to go over oils for focus and oils for calming the mind. Okay, so here we are, essential oils for focus. So one of the reasons why many of us lack focus, one reason is that we're not interested in what we are doing. So if we need to do a task that we are uninterested in doing and we find our mind wandering, the best oil is, the two best oils actually would be rosemary and lemon. Lemon, I didn't really type much about it, but lemon is an astringent. So it helps us to bring back into the present moment and really helps us with focusing, okay? It also helps to uplift the spirits. The other oil that we can use with rosemary, with lemon, is rosemary. And rosemary is proven to increase focus, to increase memory and cognitive function. And one of the reasons why is that it has a very high concentration of eucalyptol, or in other words, 1,8 cineol. And many of the essential oils that have eucalyptol will also be beneficial for focus. However, most of the studies are done with rosemary. And Shakespeare, in one of his plays, which I don't remember, because I really don't read Shakespeare that much, but I think it was in Hamlet. He says, he writes, rosemary, that's for remembrance. So even back then, they had this correlation of that different herbs can be used for different areas like focus and memory. And something that's very important, especially for those of us that have any interest in Chinese medicine, is that rosemary strongly supports our lung and our Wei Qi. Again, one thing that I didn't mention is that the lungs are very much associated with order, right? So when we do rhythmic breathing, by bringing order into our body, we will be bringing order into our lives. And rosemary is very important when you are working with building boundaries. It supports what we call the Wei Qi in Chinese medicine. And the Wei Qi, if the Wei Qi is too open, we will begin on a physical level, begin to sweat too much because the Wei Qi is in charge of opening and closing the pores. But on a more metaphorical note, it's also very much associated with boundaries. So for those of us that are in the process of setting some boundaries with people or even ourselves, rosemary is the essential oil to use. And another oil that you can certainly begin to use with rosemary is peppermint. Peppermint is the kind of essential oil that you would want to use if you're doing quite a bit of work late into the night, spending excess hours studying or excess hours preparing something. It awakens and quickly refreshes the mind, and it gives the mind a quick shift into clarity. However, because peppermint is a top note, it evaporates quite quickly. So you will have to use it on a continual basis, meaning you could place a drop of peppermint on a piece of paper or a tissue, and every half an hour you can take a few slow inhalations of the aroma from the tissue. Rosemary will tend to last a little bit longer. Okay. Rosemary and peppermint are also very beneficial to diffuse in the room to create the continual inhalation of these aromas. But just be mindful that if you are using a diffuser, your brain is going to become accustomed to the scent, so it's not going to trigger so much. So I'd recommend alternating between rosemary and peppermint. Another important oil that we can begin to use for focus is ginger. Ginger is an important essential oil when we are beginning to work with willpower, when we feel as if we don't have enough will to complete something. You're just, you're so tired, you can't deal with it. This is where ginger comes in. Ginger is warming, it's a rhizome, very strong scent, and it really helps with increasing determination and clarity. And where I would recommend to place this would be, of course, in a concentration of jojoba oil or another base oil, 1 drop of ginger in about a nickel size of massage oil, and you can massage it just below your belly. This in Chinese medicine is a very important point called Ren 6, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches below the belly. Massage it there. You can even massage it around the belly button. And this area helps to tonify, strengthen our qi. Also will help with a little bit of a willpower as well. Works with our yuan source qi, our base qi. Also Ren 4, 2 inches below that, about 2 inches below that. But nevertheless, Ren 6 is good enough. Another essential oil that we can use when we are lacking focus and it's due to anxiety and fear. This is what I use quite a bit when people have anxiety over tests and things like that, or maybe over a job interview. I would use neroli. Neroli is a very precious oil. It's one of the most expensive essential oils. The beauty about neroli is that, and the beauty about many flowers is that you don't need to use a lot to have a very strong effect. And the amount of essential oil that comes out of a flower is very, very small. But when we think about the flower, what is the flower? The flower, for most people, would consider the flower the most precious part of the plant or the tree, right? It blooms, but it doesn't last a long time. So that's one thing to consider when we're using flowers. We're using very sacred scents, very sacred natural substances. And I will never forget to mention that when we're using flowers like rose, not so much lavender, but rose, neroli, ylang ylang, jasmine, we need to really take into consideration how these oils or how the flowers are obtained. Most often they're picked by hand between, say, 5 and 8 in the morning through certain times of the year. And there is quite a bit of labor that goes into making the essential oil. Beyond the picking, you have to take the stems out, take the leaves, take the branches out in order for the flowers to be distilled. So there's lots of labor in it. And I think there's lots of people that are teaching, not speaking badly about anybody, but I think if we are teaching about essential oils, we need to really respect the people that are making the essential oils for us. And for those that know me, as long as I've been teaching, even though I do have my Meridian Biologics brand, I'm not someone that goes and markets so much, because I really want the people that are coming to me to heal on their own accord. And yes, use my blends, but that's secondary. Nevertheless, the ironic thing is I put a blend here. Okay, sorry. So a blend that we can begin to use for focus would be a blend that I call Support Po, which is really supporting the spirit of the lungs. It contains lemon, pine, rosemary, and frankincense. And the reason why I even start to make blends is because it comes very burdensome to continue to blend one essential oil with another essential oil during our treatment. So these blends are based on Chinese medicine. And yes, Meridian Biologics blend, we use it to support the lung qi to prevent common colds and sicknesses. But I use it quite a bit for those of us that need to increase their focus a little bit. You see here it has lemon, rosemary, frankincense, and pine is another essential oil that we certainly can begin to use for focus. It's a needle, and needles tend to be very astringent and a little bit drying. So this oil would be very beneficial for those of us that have a little bit of dampness and foggy headedness. Pine with peppermint and the lemon work quite well. And I'll go into points a little while later, how to use the oils, okay? How are we doing on time? Okay, 7:30, great. So essential oils to aid in relaxation. So there's many essential oils that we can use. One of the most common essential oils that we can use is lavender. And lavender, I like to use quite a bit when I'm working with breath work for my clients. It's one of these essential oils that has an affinity to the lungs and the liver, thereby the diaphragm. It's going to have the ability to be calming for those that need to be calmed, and uplifted for those that need a little bit of pep. For those in the essential oil industry, we call this an essential oil that helps to regulate. And lavender, as you can see, if you take a look at the lavender bush, it grows upwards and outwards, right? So it's very good for those of us that have a little bit of anxiety when we are doing any kind of creative event. It's good for those of us that have anxiety, sharing our creations with the world. And for basic anxiety, it's very good for those that are having trouble with insomnia. And also lavender, because it's a flower, it's going to be very beneficial for helping to accept where life has brought us, whether it's through divine providence or whether we believe it's through the choices that we make. And the beauty about working with flowers and geranium as well, for those of us that are moving through a difficult event in healing, it gives us a little space of grace, a little time to breathe and relax and reflect. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, healing is not only about accepting and being with it, about shifting our mind. It's also about having the courage to move forward. Yet sometimes we need to take a step back and be with what is in acceptance. And I found that for myself and for my other patients that are journeyers into their internal world, it opens up a great vessel of intuition when we allow ourselves to sit with our pain. And that's something that I will never take for granted. And for those of us that are healers, pain is very important in our life because it's through our pain that we grow. And I can speak about that for hours. So lavender, calming and uplifting, and we'll see in a little bit that we'll use this quite a bit on pericardium 6 and pericardium 8 to help to clear heat, and also on Ren 17. Pomarosa is an interesting oil. It's distilled from a grass, yet it acts very much like a flower. So it's very beneficial for somebody that has chronic, mild anxiety, that it's part of their constitution. And this is, along with geranium, one of the first essential oils that I use when somebody is new to my office or new to holistic healing, because it really allows the client to breathe deeper. It soothes the mind, allows them to sink into their treatment a little bit, and really helps in quelling any anxiety or some anxiety of going to a new practitioner. And one thing that many people have anxiety about when they begin the healing process or the integration process with a new practitioner is that they know in order to integrate fully or to heal to a deep level, some of their vulnerabilities or pain will need to be exposed. And this allows them to be a little bit more at peace with that. Okay. And I would use Palmarosa on Do 24, Yin Tang, Tai Yang, but be very careful not to get any of the essential oil into the eyes. Okay, very careful. Or we can use this on pericardium 8 and pericardium 6 as well. Another important essential oil that I use very often with geranium, with Palmarosa, is geranium. And many books will say that geranium and Palmarosa, if you use them together, it's like rose. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Rose is in a class by itself. The reason why geranium and Palmarosa are used together to substitute rose is because rose is so expensive and geranium has some of the other functions, some of the similar functions. It's like very often, like in Chinese herbs, we will substitute dangshen, use high dosages of dangshen for substituting for renshen, because renshen is so expensive, but it's similar but different. I'll buy renshen for most of my patients. Anyway, geranium and Palmarosa are extremely similar. Geranium is an essential oil that I like to think of as a very calming, loving, and accepting mother, where you just sort of like need a hug, knowing that everything is going to be okay. That's the statement of geranium. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Geranium is distilled from the leaf and a little bit of and the flower. But what's interesting, even though it acts like a flower, the therapeutic properties are from the leaf. And why is this important when we're speaking about aid in relaxation? Like I mentioned when we first started, the lungs and the heart have a direct relationship. So by slowing our breath, we will slow our hearts. Okay. Geranium, calm to the heart, calm to the mind, state of grace. It gives space. It gives space. Okay. Neroli, I mentioned before, not only is it beneficial for focus, it's also very beneficial if there is worry and anxiety. Neroli is an oil that is really known to quickly bring somebody or place somebody back into the present or move into the present. And a very simple way that I use neroli for this purpose is use it on the palms of the hands and Ren 17, which is the influential point of chi of the entire body, which is on the sternum, in the center of the sternum, on the nipple line, the center of the nipple line. This is the influential point of chi in the whole body. Okay, directs the chi where to go. Okay, so very beneficial if there's worry and anxiety. Also, if the worry and anxiety is accompanied by digestive issues. Why is this? Because neroli also has the ability to help to tonify and strengthen our spleen and our stomach in Chinese medicine. Worry, when our spleen and stomach and our earth element is weak, very often we will begin to worry. Okay, so neroli is probably the best oil for worry. Another beneficial for worry is Roman chamomile. So Roman chamomile is an oil that is very much associated with our solar plexus. So it's going to be very beneficial for those of us that tend to take things too personally. And it's for those of us that are like, our heart is so open, like if someone doesn't accept our gift or our love, we would become crushed by it. This is Roman chamomile, right? It helps to nourish and calm our solar plexus. So a very simple way to use Roman chamomile is to place a drop with the base oil and just gently massage it along the solar plexus area. Gently relax it. And what's also nice is placing a warm compress on it. And this is an oil that I use when people are having very much difficulty in making a decision. Okay, because a decision is usually made by our liver in Chinese medicine. If there is liver qi or our heart, but in this case, we're going to speak about in terms of liver. If there is a lot of stagnation in making a decision, Roman chamomile is the one to go to. Why? Because Roman chamomile helps to promote the movement of liver qi very softly. It helps the mind to move forward in life very gently. And it also helps to nourish the heart. So for those of us that are working with chakras, I know many of us, when we're working with healthy living, we speak in those terms. It helps to align our heart and our solar plexus chakra, okay? On the opposite side, if you need much more inner strength of the solar plexus, you could also use rosemary if you're looking to be much more independent and learning to say no, okay? Another oil, which is probably my favorite oil, would be sandalwood. So sandalwood, it's the heaviest oil that we learned so far, the thickest oil that we learned so far. So that gives us a little bit of a clue that it will last a little bit longer. It's a little bit more, it's much more grounding than the other oils. And it's very good for those of us that are doing inner work, and very beneficial for those of us that are really trying to make shifts for the long term. It's an oil that we can certainly use in meditation. We use it quite a bit on the third eye, but for practical purposes, I think it's an extraordinary oil to use on Ren 17 and also on pericardium 6. And one point that we didn't share yet would be kidney 1, which is at the indentation on your foot. And this is a point that is the soft part of your foot, the center, the indentation. This would be the area that is very much associated with being rooted and grounded. So sandalwood is very beneficial for that. And unlike many of the other oils, you would need to use less of the sandalwood to have a great effect. Okay. So oils like sandalwood, Roman chamomile, and sandalwood, Roman chamomile, and is there another one? And neroli, we don't need to use a lot of to have a great effect. They tend to last a little bit longer. And if you ever smelt Roman chamomile, you know there's like a very diffuse scent. So here are just some points that I'm happy to go over again. We have a Dew 24 over here, which is very good for calming the mind, relaxing the mind, stabilizing the heart. We have Yin Tang over here, which is an oil that helps to tonify and strengthen and nourish our heart chi. It's also the point that I would use with a needle or with, say, a geranium or pomarosa, and people relax immediately. Another one is a Taiyang over here. Again, very relaxing, especially for those of us that tend to get migraines when we are stressed or when we are anxious. And the oil that I would use over here would usually be Roman chamomile. Other points that we can use would be pericardium 8 over here. Anxiety in Chinese medicine is very much associated with fire. So this is the fire point on the fire channel. So we want to use an oil that's cooling, like Roman chamomile, pomarosa, or lavender to cool fire, okay? Another point that I really don't use that much with massage, but I want to share with you anyway. It's a point that I use with needles, oils, and a little stick-on seeds. It's a pericardium 6. This is a very important point to use when there's anxiety with shortness of breath and digestive issues. So the oil that we can begin to use would be neroli or Roman chamomile for this, okay? Also, I just use it today. It's an important oil for morning sickness for somebody that is pregnant. And pericardium 6 aids digestion, calms anxiety, calms the heart. It also aids in increasing respiration. But why does it aid in increasing the depth of respiration? It's because it relaxes the heart. Okay, again, that direct relationship. Another point that I use quite a bit would be REN 17, the point that I shared earlier. And this is the point that we use when we really want to direct the chi of the body in a certain direction, right? So any of the oils that we went over today, we can use REN 17 to direct the chi. So, okay, neroli, REN 17, because you want to tonify the heart, calm the mind, aid in digestion. So, okay, so let's place what we learned together. Let's place what we already learned in this class together. Okay, so you want to use neroli to calm the mind, relax the heart, but they also have digestive troubles. Okay, great. So use pericardium 6 with it. And also, pericardium 6 and REN 17 together, along with DU 20, yin tang and DU 24. This may be a little bit confusing, but it forms a triangle. So this is getting into a little bit of sacred geometry, but there's an acupuncturist called Mikio Sankey who wrote a few books on sacred geometry and how it relates to acupuncture, and he calls it esoteric acupuncture. And for many of us, it works very well. However, if somebody is a very physical person and they have a lot of pain, I don't necessarily think this is the way to go. But if you're really looking to change somebody's consciousness, you can use it with essential oils. Okay, so these are just some examples. And we have, by the way, whenever I teach, I always give more than is needed, because I thought I was only supposed to teach for an hour, but I kept on going. So before I go into work that I do, does anybody have any questions? Was some of this practical? Yes? Okay, cool. I never know if this will be practical or not, depending on who
Mark,
was taking the class. Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
So for those of us who may or may not be familiar with essential oils, what's your recommendation to us on which oil needs to be diluted and which ones are not?
Okay, so this is a great question, and thank you. So all essential oils really should be diluted for a few reasons. One, if you're placing certain oils on the skin, for example, like cinnamon, clove, it could burn the skin. And you certainly never want to take a bath with any undiluted essential oils. Another reason why we don't want to put them neatly on the skin without a base oil is because it is decreasing the efficacy of the treatment. Why? Because the oils are eventually going to evaporate into the air. And when we are using them with acupuncture points or acupressure points, we don't need to use a lot. What we are trying to do when we're using essential oils and needles for that matter and massage, we're looking to change the consciousness of the individual, change the physical body of the individual. But really what these acupoints are anointing points. We're anointing the individual to move in a different direction. And because the main effect of the aroma is through the inhalation of the aroma, where actually most gets into the blood, the inhalation is the most important part. So yeah, listen, yeah, there have been times where I used essential oils undiluted on the skin, but that is somebody that is has a lot of what we call in Chinese medicine damp heat, where the skin is extremely greasy and like it's almost dirty for that matter. So yeah, because they're very high in antibacterial and antiviral properties, I did, but that's very, very rare that I do. I know, I'll leave it as that.
I'm sorry.
Less is generally more. The only time where you do want to use and this is my opinion, I know many people in the aromatherapy industry will say only use 4% concentration. If we are having an acute common cold, or the flu for that matter, we need to use more than 4%. In my opinion, we need to use it at least 10%, if not more. But then again, if you're not trained in essential oils, go to somebody that is, and then they can share with you how to use them. I always err on the side of caution with recommending how to use essential oils, unless I'm teaching an actual class on it. But yeah, there's definitely many different methods of using essential oils.
I'm sorry, I have one
If
more.
you're using it for anxiety, less is more. Go on, sorry.
Clarification for to use in a diffuser.
Okay,
Right, can you just clarify a little bit on whether we need to dilute that or not?
okay, great question, thank you. So with the diffuser, there's different kinds of diffusers. There are candle diffusers, which actually is my favorite. And there's a candle, then on top of that is like sort of like a bowl shaped thing where you place water in it and a few drops of essential oils. And in that case, you would consider that diluting it, I suppose, but it's really not diluting it unless you use it with a base oil. There are electric diffusers, or I should say air mist diffusers, where you still put it in water and it brings a mist out into the air. These are many people's favorite diffusers, and this is what I would recommend if you have like a common cold, or if you're working with anxiety or calming the mind. But I think the candle diffusers are great for relaxation as well. Another kind of diffuser is like this electric dish diffuser. It looks like a bowl. It has a little bit of indentation to put the oil in. But honestly, I find that just wastes a lot of essential oil, and it doesn't do much. This is my experience. Many of you can have different experiences, but to me, it just wastes the oil. Another way that we can use the oils without diffusing them is to use an inhaler stick. And for this, I place the inhaler stick with some jojoba oil, and I place a couple of drops of the oil on it. And it helped me out quite a bit when I had COVID in December. I kept on trying to see if I could smell anything. Does that answer your questions? Yeah, okay. Anybody else? This was really fun for me. So I hope you guys got lots of great useful information and a little bit of self-promotion, if I can. Like Tom said in the beginning, yes, I do practice acupuncture and massage, and thank God my practice is going well. But I think most people shift and change the most with the mind-body therapies that I do. And I've been doing a lot of Zoom sessions since COVID, and they work great. And so the virtual mind-body classes that I do, primarily it's with a mental imagery and dream work. And some will say this is like coaching in a sense, but I really enjoy helping people work through different obstacles in life and different conflicts in life, because this is really how they grow. And our soul or our subconscious can really want and have a strong desire to do something, but there can be many different obstacles in the way, usually false beliefs. And I work quite a bit with that through mental imagery. And with dream work, this was the second book that I wrote. And with dreams, we're always working with truth. We just need to figure out the meaning and see how it is our own inner reflection in our waking world. And it's a whole different language. But once we begin to work with dreams, we see it not only in our dream world, but we see it in our waking world. And the truth is, our day starts at night at 12 a.m., usually when we're dreaming. So dreams share with us the blueprint for tomorrow. And that's very, very important. And probably the most important thing that I do for those of us that really want to transform. Hypnotherapy is something that I've been doing for many years. In the past, I would really only do it for stopping smoking and losing weight, but now I am branching out, and I've decided to do it with people that are moving through obstacles that may have tried many different things, but it hasn't worked. Why? Because the subconscious is so powerful, and when we plant the seeds in our subconscious mind, it will reflect in our waking world. And in September, I'm going to be having a 6-month mind body intensive. It's really not going to be an intensive. It's 2 hours a day for 1 day a month, but it's going to be filled with tons of information to really help practitioners and to help students grow. And at the end of the day, that's what I care about, is all of my students, patients, to connect to that deeper space within themselves and begin to start to use that space for growth and for productivity and for helping others heal. Because at the end of the day, we may think that we're all separate, but we're all one consciousness. So when I shift, you shift. When you shift, everybody else shifts. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. So
You're welcome, guys. Thank you. Always feel free to email me, and I'll usually get back within like 48 hours. And Tom, listen, awesome. Thank you very much. And for those of you that didn't ask questions, you can reach out to me via email, okay?
So I just want to remind everybody, there'll be an email from Meetup soliciting your feedback. So if you can, please take a moment to respond. Additionally, there have other exciting events coming up, so do check them out. If you are a practitioner, do check out the Chinese Medicine Meetup group, the Chinese Medicine Practitioners Meetup group on the other side of Meetup. We have another group there, and do check it out. For those with who are not practitioners, we do have some good speakers coming up. So I just want to point that out, and that's it. Thank you, and everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Okay,
Have
great.
the best evening. Thanks. Rock and roll. Cool.
Bye-bye.
See ya.